Today, otherwise cloudy skies with temperatures holding rather steady. Winds out of the southwest around 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 25. For tonight, a slight chance for snow, cloudy, and a low near 32. Friday, a chance for snow showers, cloudy skies, high 31 degrees. Saturday, a slight chance for snow, cloudy, and a high.
That's the way people in your life are supposed to be.
From the
Don't forget
Weatherology
that.
Weather Center,
That's when you know it's godly.
meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 36.
Darius?
18. That's how many cars
I am here.
Hi, sweetie. How are you? We're on Facebook. We are on Facebook Live.
Facing
Can you hear him?
Semiconductor chip the size of a quarter.
Yeah.
Tens of
Hello?
thousands of vehicles are languishing.
Okay, no, she's doing a test to make sure that she can hear
I'm bringing
you.
up Facebook now.
Okay,
Give
all
me
right.
1 second.
Okay, no
In a
worries.
post-vaccine world, it seems that cars, trucks, SUVs aren't the only thing reliant on those chips. Laptops, notebooks, cell phones, everything we use every day relies on silicon-based semiconductor chips, and there's a backup never before seen. So what
Hello,
does this
good
all mean
morning.
for us?
Hello.
We need your used vehicles
Hello,
or
good
jewelry.
morning. Good morning.
Does this
Good
mean for
morning.
you?
How's everybody doing?
All
And we're
right.
doing quick deals. Stop by our store at the corner of 115th and Pulaski Road, and we'll
Testing.
do a quick
Testing.
evaluation of your
Testing. How are you?
Hey, how you doing today?
Good morning. Hey, how you doing today?
How you doing?
Okay.
He's good.
Okay, great. Am I good with him too?
Yeah, you guys
Okay.
are both good.
Great. Okay. Pastor Brooks, just give me a moment because I'm trying to do a few things right now.
Salary plus commission sales position. WCPT 820 is proud to be Chicago's only progressive voice, and we strive to bring quality programming to our listeners. Email your resume to jobs@WCPT820.com.
'Tis the season for performance. And when it comes to Porsche, you'll find that and more in every model at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. Experience the season's best in our entire lineup. The Cayenne, Macan, Panamera, the 911, and the fully electric Taycan. Dash in and reserve your Porsche with us today and add some performance to your winter season. The Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. Visit 4Porsche.com. The number 4, Porsche.com.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Unlike other health concerns, mental
We got 3 minutes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
won't show up on an eye chart, and you can't measure it on your bathroom scale. Sorting out a mental health concern is not something to attempt on your own. You won't find a bipolar disorder by looking at a thermometer. Like many other health conditions, help for mental illness takes professional diagnosis and treatment. Anxiety won't just go away under a stick-on bandage. So the sooner you seek treatment, the better. If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. Find out what to do. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support. That's samhsa.gov/support.
What is a number story?
My number story started with fear and a lack of support, and it has led me to be there for others.
A number story begins in our childhood with incidents, adverse childhood experiences.
My number story begins with the separation from my father and the emotional abandonment from my mother, and leads to me being a role model to not only myself, but those around me by becoming the person that wasn't there for me.
Cases are so common, 2/3 of us have one.
My number story begins with drug abuse and homelessness and leads to realizing that I can live life by my own standards.
A study found the more ACEs, the more likely we may experience a host of serious health effects, physical and mental. That doesn't need to be the case. Your ACE is simply an entry point to your own story. Where it leads is up to you.
My number story begins with years of emotional abuse and leads to peace, clarity, and security in my self-worth.
Take control of where your number story leads at numberstory.org.
A gentle breeze blows across your face.
We have 1 minute.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank you. All right. Let the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts the acceptable in thy sight.
Everything on hold to connect
O
with you.
Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Thank
Now,
you.
Imagine it's all gone. No fish, no lake, no water.
Okay, if you can turn that
None
up
of
just a
life's
bit,
vital resources,
Jewel.
irreplaceably depleted. Time is running out to
I
protect
appreciate
freshwater.
that.
And without our love, it can and will disappear. It's our
All
choice.
right, let's have a great show.
Love it.
We're going to have a fantastic show.
Amen to that.
And we have about 5 seconds.
Okay.
At wwf.org/.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is a joy to be with you today. Getting a little bit of feedback, I'm going to work that out. It's wonderful to be with you. We've got a lot to talk about today, a lot to talk about, and want to hear from you. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. And we, of course, are on AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about Africa today. This Africa-U.S. summit is monumental. Nearly 50 countries are there, more than 50 countries in Africa. Many people feel that America has missed a grand opportunity to become a partner in Africa, as you see Russia and as you see China, who have been there for decades, quite frankly. A lot of the freedom struggles, breaking the chains of colonialism, were supported by Russia down through the decades, while America supported the British and the French and the colonizers. That's something that you need to be mindful of. But now we're looking at, and when you go to Africa, you see that the African Union headquarters, which rivals the United Nations. In fact, it makes the United Nations headquarters look like a little teeny schoolhouse. It was built by the Chinese. So now President Biden is saying, you know what, we're going to change all of that. We are going to partner with you. And that's going to be very interesting. That'll be a very interesting relationship that they've got to work out. We're going to see how that's going to work. Will the African nations become part of the G20? Well, certainly the wealth of the Western world is built on African resources. Indeed, you would not have a mobile phone if you did not have Africa and cut deals with Africa, with African nations that, quite frankly, disadvantage them. So we're going to talk about that today. And then what about these inflation rates? We've already been told that raising the inflation rates will take jobs away from Americans, and yet the Fed are going to do it again. So what is that? How does the Fed, how do these inflation rates impact you, and how are you dealing with these rising prices? I want to hear from, I want you to call me throughout the show and give me that. So phone line 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. We want to hear from you today. We want to hear what you have to say about inflation. We want to hear what you have to say about this new approach to Africa. This new approach to Africa, we get the sense that Africa is, oh goodness, they can't get it together. We've got to help them. We need charity. No. We need parity, because the fact is Africa is our creditor. They've given America and the Western world the bodies of Africans to build the Western world. Their minerals, they still give them. No, there's a lot that the Western world would not exist as a superpower that it is without Africa. So I'm going to talk about that today. I'll learn some things from some people who've been involved in the space for a long time. And we've got to get this camera together, I tell you that. In the meantime, let's get some of these headlines together. And I want to hear from you. I want you to call me at 773-763. WCPT 773-763-9278 773-763 WCPT. I'm going to get these together. In the meantime, in Chicago, we're going to have a high of 38 degrees. It will be cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 34 degrees, but you're going to have some snow in heartbreak. Heartbreak. France lost to who? They lost. Well, no, France won over Morocco yesterday, 2-0. But boy, oh boy, this is the first time an African nation had gotten this close to the championship. It's very, very exciting what they have done. They have done a lot of great things. So you know what? Let's get right to it. I'm very, very excited about what the future holds for African soccer and for Morocco and just for the whole continent. It's just great, and for the Arab world. And of course, France will be facing off against the world's best team, they say, Argentina. So what's going to happen here? Don't know. We'll see on Saturday. That's when you're going to have the championship game. The Knicks won over the Bulls yesterday, 128-120, and the Clippers were triumphant over the Timberwolves, 99-88. The NFL, the 49ers will be playing the Seahawks later on tonight. In the NHL, the Golden Knights will be playing in Chicago, and the Wild 4 and the Red Wings 1. Tornadoes have left trails of destruction across Louisiana and the southeast. This storm system continues to run from the west straight across the east through Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Alabama, and Florida, and on and eastward on. More than 15 million could see severe weather today in parts of Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. We are praying for them. The House of Representatives voted yesterday to pass a stopgap bill to avert a government shutdown at the end of this week. The White House is warning of a possible COVID-19 winter surge, urging Americans to gather and socialize safely with family and friends during the holiday season. Of course, you know we're going to continue to ask Dr. Shanina Knighton about that today. The U.S. federal government is suing Arizona for placing shipping containers at the U.S.-Mexico border as a temporary wall, according to court documents filed yesterday. 10 years after Sandy Hook, progressives are leading the call for gun control. We still do not have a ban on assault weapons, if you can believe that. Nurses have had enough in England. Guess what? The largest ever nursing strike, the largest ever healthcare system strike kicks off today over their low pay, pulling for them. And this is chilling. The Republican Attorney General in Texas sought a list of trans Texans. Wow. It's an alarming attack on the privacy, safety, and dignity of transgender Texans, according to the ACLU. Those are, despicable, disgusting, egregious, terrifying. Those are some of the responses. But Texas Attorney General, Republican Ken Paxton, sought to create a list of state residents who had changed their gender on driver's licenses and other Department of Public Safety records. Wow. The head of the DPS driver's license division wrote to colleagues on June 30th, we need a total number of changes from male to female and female to male for the last 24 months. I'd just like to know why. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. How are you? I'm about to fix this camera, but how you doing, Pastor Brooks?
Santita, I am great, grand, and glorious.
All right now. I love that. Well, give us some good news today. Well, just very quickly before you get the good news, very, very quickly, tell us about how we can get some food from you.
Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. It's right off of 290 in Manheim, right by Hillside. Every Tuesday from 5 to 7, we give away between $200 and $300 worth of food goods, ham, chicken, eggs, grass, tomatoes. You name it, and Shirley Caesar would say every Tuesday from 5 till 7. And on Wednesdays, we feed the seniors from noon till 2 because we don't want them out in the evening. And it's every Tuesday. So if you know anybody who needs food, Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois, from 5 to 2 every Tuesday, and Wednesday from noon till 2.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Amen to that. So what's the good news?
Amen. The good news is I'm excited that no matter what's happening, we have direction. We really do literally and figuratively have direction when God is speaking to us in reference of our lives. Things you was talking about today, what's going on. I was going into a restaurant the other day, and the restaurant didn't have no name on it. It was basically like, whoever go in there, that's who go in there. I said, whoa, not a criticism, just an observation. Psalms 119:11 says, thy word have I hid in my heart that I might not sin against thee. And Santita, if I had to use the thought this morning, reasons to prevail, reasons to prevail. Santita, a little bit of experience outweighs a whole lot of theory. And you cannot accelerate experience. When you can see clear in your personal life, the hard stuff, and even disobedience. One who knows God's word for themselves, particularly, the word becomes one's lifeline and a tool that has never failed and never disappoints. Perfect example. When there are absolutely nothing you can do about something, simply letting it go works. I was reading something the other day, and it says, when words are not adequate, doing gets the job done. The Word of God says, cast your cares on me, or don't be worried about stuff you can't change, for real, for real. God's Word is obedience. It works things out without us or without you. Romans 8:28 says, and for we know that all things work together for the good. To do what is designed to do without you. God's word is already established to do what Darius can't do, to do what Santita can't do, to do what the believer can't do. God has ways that's already designed his way at our disposal that's already scripted. There's a saying that if you have only a hammer, everything looks like a nail to you, and the way you'll do things is hammer style. And I'm not talking about the artist. But wonderfully, God is so God. Trusting him prevents us from hammering away at things that needs a screwdriver's approach. What makes you keep going and prevailing is the word you literally and figuratively have in your head and heart, and how you weigh out all of your decisions and choices for real. When you're dealing with a situation and you are doing self-evaluation, your response to you should be reasons to prevail. Why are you doing this? What's your motive? What's the outcome? And even, Santita, if your hands get dirty, keep your heart clean. At the end of the day, make sure your answer is clear to you from God's word in your heart. Here are the reasons you'll need to prevail here. Your most greatest contribution to your life is not affections, feelings, and emotions. It's one's intentional sacrifice to do beyond what you feel. And that's why he says, obey. Obedience is better than sacrifice. We need reasons to prevail is Psalms 84:11. For the Lord is a sun and shield. The Lord will give you grace and glory. No good thing will I withhold from him that walketh upright. Reasons to prevail.
Amen. As Spike Lee would say, do the right thing. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Everybody, the Tommy's reunion recording is out. Of course, Darius Brooks, you've got to get Your Will Is What's Best for Me. What a blessing he is. Get on over to Grace Central. You'll get a word that will bless you on Sundays. And get over there on Tuesday. You'll get you some food. So many Americans need it. Don't be ashamed, everybody. And once you get your food, get in that line and pass out some food to someone else. How about that? That's one of the lessons that I've taken away from my parents. My father, who had to stand in the food line at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church when his scholarship money ran out, but he had to feed me, my mom, my brother Jesse, my brother Jonathan, and he was not ashamed to do that, even though he and my mother worked their way through school. He now, every year, through the holiday season, he is giving away food because we know what that's like, everybody. Love you, Pastor Darius Brooks. We've got Dr. Shanina Knighton with us today. Love you, love you, love you. Got Dr. Shanina Knighton here. We're so glad to have you always. So glad to have you always. I have a question for you that's kind of maybe what you're not expecting today, but as a healthcare professional, I have to ask you this. We were all devastated to learn about DJ Twitch from the Ellen Show. We just saw him a few days ago dancing with his beautiful wife. We've seen him with pictures with their beautiful family, and they were dancing and just getting into the holiday swing, and then he kills himself. Is there anything that we should be looking for, particularly at this time of year? I mean, as a nurse, as someone who's been a healthcare professional, are there any when you see people, are there any telltale signs? Is there anything that jumps out at you?
So I'm gonna say worse. And when I say worse, Santita, there used to be classic signs of people saying, like they have you go through, let's say, depression assessments of my life is worthless, no one loves me, no one supports me, things such as I feel alone. People that start giving away stuff, like valuable stuff or like stuff to them that, otherwise they wouldn't give away. So there's like a numerous amount of things that we see as being like cardinal signs. But the reason why I'm saying that I can't even base it off of that anymore is because when we were looking at those assessment signs, we didn't really have like this heavy uptick, right? In the use or understanding the unintended consequences of social media. As a result of social media being around, one of the things that even I noticed, and I know that it's out too in the literature, is the fact that when you are someone that posts heavy online, when you post heavy online, then people tend to think that based off of what it is that you're doing online is applicable in your life. And so they tend to not check on you more because they feel like they're unconsciously already checking in with you. However, these individuals that are doing so are likely the ones that are lonely. We actually had that happen a couple years ago where the well-known club promoter here in Cleveland, long story short, has kids, well-known, great personality. When people go out and see him, like they love to see him, all of that. He put a posting up on social media and it said, long story short, take care of my kids. I hope that my child's mother know that I love them since she tried to take my kids away from me, but maybe it'll be easier for everyone if I'm not here. And long story short, a couple hours later, he committed suicide. Oof. So it is a real thing. And I think the thing is we don't check in with each other enough to understand like how people are really doing. And there's this assumption that problems based off of what it is have to be big or small and impact people the same way. So if, for example, someone gets a bad test grade versus someone that just had a death in the family, people want to base that off of their level of severity opposed to that person's reality. And so it's really being able to tap in and understand that all of us think different, we behave different, and we handle stressors different. And we have all different backgrounds, which may influence us in terms of who it is that we are as human beings. So things like that will catch people off guard because on TV, you see someone that might be happy, like you see, he always has had a bubbly personality on TV, want to make you laugh, being there and being supportive, of the host. And so you would look at that and someone say, oh my gosh, that's a wonderful job to have. That's a wonderful personality. But you don't know what people are dealing with outside of that. We're also dealing with the effects of COVID, where people have had to be housed, isolated by themselves. Deals that people would have normally got, they're no longer, and when I say deals, talking about contracts, talking about gigs, whatever it is that happens, they may not necessarily get those now because of how social media has changed the entertainment world, just like it's changed healthcare and everything else that's around us. And so we don't understand how people are dealing with the fallout of COVID still. And so I just tell people, check in with people, understand that people have lost many loved ones as a result of having COVID. People are suffering from long COVID, which has been, also a reason why people have committed suicide because of their quality of life. You now got medically assisted death, right? Which we talked about earlier this week. So it's just really tapping into people and understanding how they feel about the value of their life and the quality of their life. But the best thing we can do for each other is just let each other know how much we value each other. And so in that, Santita, because I know we're getting ready to end, I value you, and I value the show. I value our guests, and then too, just even letting your guests know how important they are for tuning in every day, because that's not something that people typically get. It's not something that we hear, and you never know how far kindness goes in someone's life that might be at that breaking point.
Well, I love you and value you because you're you. You don't have to do anything else but be that. And I want to thank you
Absolutely.
and let you know that I thank God for you every single day. I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Grateful. And you know, and everyone, I just don't want you to, wow, really make permanent, which is temporary. Even mental illness that ebbs and flows. So text 988. If you feel you are in trouble, text 988. It's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Text 988. You don't even have to make a phone call now. Just text 988. And I want you to really, and let's check in with each other. Let's check in with each other and make sure that each other is okay. And do not conflate professional success with personal happiness. It's just not true. It's just not true. God bless him and his family. And God bless you and yours. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow, girl. Love you.
I love you too.
So important to say. Miss Wanda, sending you much love. Ashley King up down there in Memphis, back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. We're going to talk about Africa in just a couple of minutes. Thank you so much. I mean, when I saw that headline yesterday, when I got off the air, it was like, what? You know, and then you see, whew. I said, but you don't know what people are going through. You have no idea. That's why you have to be very careful about what you say, how you say things to people. You don't know. You don't know what someone's triggers are. You don't know something you say can save someone's life or push them over the edge. It can do it. It can do it. It can do it. So, so God bless him. And, you know, and his wife and children, because I mean, and this is a Christmas season too, his children and his wife have just got to be devastated. But sadly, this is replicated over and over and over and over again. I mean, this is happening to lots of families, lots and lots and lots of families. So everybody, please take care of yourselves and text 988. 988. If you feel you got a problem, just please, or just tell somebody, you know what, I'm in trouble. Believe me, somebody's going to listen. Somebody's going to listen to you. Somebody's going to listen. So I just want you to think about that. So you ready for a great weekend? As you see, I'm pulling all these other little pieces together here.
I actually am. Like, I'm just getting some things completed around the house because I will be, out of commission tomorrow, meaning I will be, I want to doing stuff that I want to do. So I got like some DIY projects going around in the house, and I just want to be able to do that, you know, and enjoy that. So I think that's kind of like where I'm at right now. So just really doing stuff that I just don't typically get a chance to do.
Good for you. And just have some fun, because that's the key.
I am going on in maybe a week, literally a week from today, I'll be on vacation, and a real vacation, like one where I don't have to tune in and do nothing for work. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that because I have not had that since starting this new job. And I take vacations, sadly, but my vacations that I've taken has really been just so I can get caught up on work and be undisturbed, if that makes sense.
Oh, don't I know it? I'm not going to do that this year. You know.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So now I'm being intentional with my time.
Well, you know, because all you have is time. That's the gift. That's the presence. My father often said that, said if one of us went missing under this Christmas tree, what could you buy to replace it? Nothing. So the great
And
gift,
that's the truth.
oh yeah, the great gift for us every Christmas morning, well, just particularly given the kind of work that our father did, has been doing, is that we'd wake up and our parents would be together. He'd be alive. Because that was something that we never ever took for granted.
Miss Jackson,
Yes.
we have about.
But I think that's the thing, Santita, and I feel like that about my life, right?
Absolutely.
So, coming up in the conditions of poverty and seeing, those to the left and right of you, like how we seeing all of these young people die. That's always been.
Miss Jackson.
I'm sorry. Hold on one moment.
We have to stand by.
Okay.
We have Chaparral, Freeman, and Aquete ready to go.
Fantastic.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. 773-763-9278. Of course, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want to hear your voices today. What about this U.S. Africa Summit? Traditionally, and when you get over to the motherland continent, you will see a heavy Russian presence. You will see a heavy Chinese presence. And they are invested. They are investing in Africa, even as you see old colonial powers really trying to hold on to the power that they have. There's a lot going on. And when you see the African Union's headquarters built by the Chinese, it dwarfs the United Nations by many times. You say, what's really going on? Has America missed an opportunity to invest in Africa and not lord over Africa? That is the tendency of the Western powers, of Western Europe, to want to lord over Africa and India and South America and all these people of color, places where people of color reside, who have built the Western world. They're now pushing back and they're saying, no, we want partnerships. And so America is looking at China, have business partnerships in Africa. They're looking at Russia. They've had long-standing ties, business relationships, and relationships with the freedom fighters in Africa. And so now America wants in. They're like, you know what? Come on over. G20, you want to be part of that? We want you to be a part of that. What are the perils? What is the promise of being part of the G20? What does all of this mean? We've got two of the leading voices, two brilliant minds who are going to help us to wrap our minds around that. We've got Netfa Freeman, a brilliant organizer. Knew him a long time ago when he was at the Institute for Policy Studies, but now he is an organizer for the Black Alliance for Peace. And then, of course, we've had Niakwete on with us so many times, African specialist, came out of Trans-Africa. At least that's a place where he left a huge footprint, and been a professor at Georgetown, George Washington University. Brilliant mind. And we're so excited to have them with us today. But first, we got to get these vittles. Are you taking any more orders, Chaparral, for Christmas?
Good morning, Santita, and we are in our final day. Tomorrow's the last day we're going to actually take orders, and we only have 2 slots left. So please, if you need something for Christmas, call us at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We can handle all of your turkey, your dressing, your ham, as well as your mac and cheese, your masticcioli, your greens and your green beans, as well as your sweets, your peach cobbler, your banana pudding, your Christmas cakes, like the red velvet, the chocolate, the German chocolate, as well as also the pound cakes. So call us at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
Love it. I got to put my order in today. I'm going to do it. I haven't done it yet. Oh, I was reading this paper, the second scramble for Africa's oil and resources. You would not have a mobile phone without Africa. Just wouldn't happen. The lithium, the cobalt, these key metals that are used to produce batteries, they come out of Africa. I mean, our tires coming out of Africa, all of those materials and more, not to mention the people who built the Western world. We all come out of Africa. So what's going on with Africa today? Why is America now having this U.S. Africa summit? What does all of this mean? Nia Akwete and Netfa Freeman, I need you to help me to understand what we're looking at today, because now, of course, the Black Alliance for Peace, you all have been looking at AFRICOM, which really was able to come to fruition in the Obama administration, right? I mean, African leaders pushed up against it, notably led by Muammar Gaddafi. But after his assassination, boom, you had AFRICOM. So now we have a large military footprint in Africa. Is that a good thing? Let's start with you, Nia Kwete. What about this summit? What is the point of this summit? Should we rejoice? Should we protest? Or should we fall somewhere in the middle?
Hello, Ms. Jackson. Thank you so much for having me. And I want to do a shout out to my brother, Netfa. We've been comrades in arms on the same side on some issues like Zimbabwe. On others, we have a brotherly difference of opinion. Now, to the summit, I think I fall somewhere in the middle for this reason. This is the second one that the United States is doing. President Obama did the first one in 2014. After him, Mr. Trump was very disrespectful to Africans. He called us vulgar names. He said all kinds of things in private and in public against Africa. And so, no, what Mr. Biden is doing is not perfect. It has weaknesses and holes in them, but I prefer that the United States engages with Africa. Now, once the engagement is there, it's up to us, the people, the American people from all kinds of backgrounds, to hold Mr. Biden's feet to the fire, to make sure that he does the right thing. So I don't like what Mr. Trump did by ignoring and insulting Africa. So I'm glad that Mr. Biden is doing this, and I think he's late to the game, okay? One of the names that you mentioned, and which looms in the background, even though Mr. Blinken, the Secretary of State, says, well, we are not doing it because of China. China is like the elephant in the room.
You know they're doing
China
it because of China. Come on.
Yes. In fact, I was telling somebody that as an African, knowing the 500-year history of what has happened to Black people since Columbus, I think we need to learn from our history. I think that we should cut through the deception and the lies and know what people are exactly about, whomever we are dealing with. So, of course, they are doing it because of China. The thing, though, is China has been doing it for at least 20 years. They have done 8 of them. Every 3 years, they do it in China, then they do it in Africa. So the U.S. is playing catch-up. And yes, I don't think it's perfect, but I'm in the middle. I want Mr. Biden to do it, and we are holding his feet to the fire to do it right. One more thing. There are people like you and the Reverend and so many astonishing African Americans. There are 40 million people of African descent in this country, okay? This is like 15% of the U.S. population. China doesn't have that. And yet China is beating America in Africa. Imagine if China also had 15% of its population be of African descent. They would have owned the continent. So because the United States is a democracy, it's not perfect at all, but it has more democracy than China. It puts an onus on us, the people, to force the government, whether it's Mr. Trump, Mr. Biden, Mr. Obama, we have to force them because we choose them with our votes. We give them our money. We have to force them to do the right thing, force them to say, demand that you treat Africa, where so many people in the United States, the people who built the United States, come from. You owe them, and a small part of what you owe them is that you treat Africa with respect. In addition, it's in your interest because all the resources that you mentioned, and people will also tell you, on the one hand, Africa is the continent that has been populated the most. scientists tell us that humans became human in Africa. So there have been humans in Africa longer than anywhere else. But today, Africa has the youngest population, the fastest growing, the most vibrant, energetic. So Africa is the continent of the future. So it's also in America's enlightened interest to engage with Africa. We, as an African, I can tell you, we don't want the Europeans. They've been doing things to us horribly for 500 years. I don't think we want the Russians either, because I, as one African, I want democracy in Africa. Africa will be in big trouble if we don't have democracy. The Russians are not democratic. The Chinese are not democratic. So we need economic engagement, but we also need democracy, where radio programs like yours can be done by Africans and they don't get locked up because they criticize the government.
Amen to that. Well, we'll see. We will see. We'll see what's going to happen here. But, what are your thoughts about this summit? Do you have any reservations? Is it perilous? Is it promise filled? Netfa Freeman, tell me.
Good morning, Santita. Good to be back on your show. I do need to clear up something in the beginning. I'm still with the Institute for Policy Studies, so that's why but I'm also with the Black Lives for Peace as an organizer. So it's not paying my bills. It's my commitment to the people. Thank you for the correction. Yes, thank you. And then I see things differently. I think, so Africa, United States is not playing catch up, so to speak. It's trying to remake itself. So it is taken over as from European colonialism, which has underdeveloped Africa and whatnot. It's taken over that role. When naked colonialism on the continent of Africa proved to be untenable because of the emergence of the people and independence movements and movements for decolonization, the United States has stepped in. And that's been the relationship. And even when it's very important to understand today what the U.S. is do in terms of what his role has been. So thinking that this thing is something that should be done because it represents some sort of good relationships with Africa would be a mistake. And we even see that United States role, and we actually need to, I think, be more critical of what form, how we define democracy. The United States. We say these things about other countries. I really don't know what the structure is of decision making in these countries. We know that the United States often calls countries undemocratic, but here there's the people of African descent and Black and brown and non-white working class people have only known fascism in this country. We're repressed. We're disenfranchised from the vote. Our history, we have political repression with COINTELPRO and the assassination of leaders, and now there's mass incarceration. There's the militarization of our communities by police, and what we see on the continent of Africa with AFRICOM, people are talking about the presence of China and now Russia being all over Africa, but the United States has some sort of some form of the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, in 53 of the 54 countries on the continent of Africa. They've militarized the continent. We can see, and this is the first military operation of AFRICOM was the decimation of Libya in 2018. The AFRICOM and the United States led that NATO destruction of that country. And we see it all, and now they're sustaining a drone war, the most intensified drone war attacks that they committing in that country is in Somalia right now, after having invaded Somalia in the 90s and overthrown the Islamic court that they didn't want to have, and now creating a void that we see the emergence of Al-Shabaab, which they claim to be fighting. Their solution, they create the problems. After destroying Libya and doing this in Somalia, it has spread the violent extremism across the continent of Africa, and now with AFRICOM and the claim that they're trying to fight this. And we've seen time and again that it's only intensified this destruction. China's doing none of this. This is not the doing of Russia. This is the United States doing it. And in France as its junior partner. This is why we're seeing the anti-French emergence, anti-French sentiments emerging across West Africa and different places. We're kicking out the French. And now they're actually quickly turning toward having an anti-Western disposition that includes the United States on the ground in Africa. We're seeing people, if we want to look at the wishes or the sentiments of the working class masses on the ground in Africa, it's not anti-Chinese. They're holding up Western flags in demonstrations against the West. And so this is what's happening on the ground. Now, I'm not advocating that these coups, a lot of these coups have taken their military coups from military officers. They were trained in AFRICOM. They're trained in the French Foreign Legions. They've created an emboldened military class, which is causing some of the destabilization and suffering that we see in Africa. The Congo, which the CIA was instrumental in the assassination of Patrice Lumumba and the installing of Mobutu Sese Seko, and over 30 years they supported this dictatorship. And now they use the proxies in Rwanda and Uganda, those militaries, to continue the destabilization of the Congo, killing millions of people. They had killed 6 million people before in the last, I don't know how many years. And this really serious violence that the United States is complicit in, directly complicit in. Now, it would be folly to think that they're coming now with some sort of, what they want is the continued rape and hyper-exploitation of Africa. They talk about the predatory loans that China gives, right? And but who's the most predator with the leading the IMF and the World Bank that has imposed debt crisis across the continent with exorbitant interest rates that they can't get out, and then imposing of what's called structural adjustment programs on the continent, not just this continent, but other places which require, they dictate the economic policies of countries, these structural adjustment programs, saying, well, you have to privatize, you have to privatize things that are state agencies and things like that. You have to accept foreign investment. You can't do things that are in the best interest of too many things that are in the best interest of workers, and you can't providing universal health care, universal education, all that kind of stuff. You have to do these neoliberal policies.
Sure.
This is notorious. And so we can't think, and the U.S. Africa, we call it the U.S. Africa Comprador Summit, because that's really what it is. They're bringing the elite comprador class to the United States to sit down. It's really tantamount to being really, if you want to see the more simplest, sensationalist terms, I guess, or simplest terms, it's a meeting between Uncle Tom and Uncle Sam to figure out how to continue the exploitation of Africa and make it look and recover its image and its trying to recover but change, remake its image and its standing.
Well, hold on.
China.
No, listen, Netfa, you've said a lot. And I think you've said what needs to be said, because indeed I've got Renee and so many people on the chat line who are echoing your sentiments. And I would like to hear Professor Ekwete respond, because it is with that history that many African Americans there is not rejoicing. There is skepticism. Now, when you're in Washington, you're dealing with an elite class, the most educated, wealthiest, probably wealthiest community in the United States, certainly one of the wealthiest, aside from Boston, and where you have these citadels of learning and power. But there is a sense of trepidation, and then some people are feeling very hopeful. They're like, well, at least Africa is now being acknowledged. Professor Ekwete, your thoughts?
Yes, thank you so much. It's true that my brother Neff put a lot of stuff on the table. And let me say right from the start, many of the criticisms that he has, I have them too. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, right now, I'm on the graduate faculty at George Washington University. I teach a course I designed called Africa's international relations? How does Africa deal with the big powers of the world? The United States, Russia, China, the Europeans, okay? And my personal, I'm an activist, actually. The universities invite me to come and teach, share this, but I'm an activist. And my guiding light is trust nobody. Don't trust the Chinese. So when I hear arguments like the Chinese are angels, no, they are not. I was born in Ghana. Go to Ghana now and see what they are doing to the Ghana landscape. If the meeting between the United States and Africa's leaders, yes, there are dictators, I agree. Museveni, Kagame, Sisi in Egypt. They are horrendous dictators being propped up by the U.S. completely. I criticize them all. My children say to me, okay, that means we are never going to Rwanda. We are never going to Uganda. We are never going to Egypt. I have criticized them on radio, on TV. They know it. So I agree with that. But here's one of my points. If the United States meeting with Africa's leaders, and they excluded the coup makers. So these are leaders who were elected. Sometimes the elections were questionable. But the U.S. also knows what happens with elections. These are people chosen by the African people. If you dismiss them as Uncle Toms, you are disrespecting Africa, number one. Number two, they are the same people, the same Uncle Toms that meet with China, and China has done it for 20-some years. So if it is wrong for the United States to meet with African leaders, why is it okay for China to meet with them? And I am telling you that China is doing the same exploitation of African resources. Admittedly, I want to be fair because I'm looking out for my continent, okay? Like I said, trust nobody. I don't trust the West. I don't trust the Chinese. I don't have stars in my eyes when I look at the Chinese. They are coming in late. They've been there for like 40 years in all of our lifetimes. They are doing things as bad as in terms of extraction. And the point is, if an American corporation is doing something, as I said, it is up to me. I've been an activist based in Washington for 40 years, 10 years in Trans-Africa, 30 years in, and I'm watching who is abusing Africa. I scream about it. My point is the point about democracy. And again, I appreciate Nets's point that American democracy has a lot of weaknesses and flaws. And African Americans know that better than me. I accept that. But my point is, this radio program is in the United States. It cannot happen in China. So when the Chinese are abusing Ghanaians, when they are abusing Kenyans, they do make bad loans, but you are right. The IMF also does it. Ghana is about to sign an agreement with the IMF that I'm not happy about. Mm-hmm. My point is, all these great powers, they come in and they abuse Africans. They take our resources. We don't have the technology. Africa doesn't have the technology to live yet. We are stuck on earth with them, so we have to deal with them. But if dealing with Biden, where you have 40 million African people of African descent, including good brothers like Netfa, who will call things out and who do their homework. Mm-hmm. I'm saying they criticize the United States even though they live in the United States. I'm an immigrant. I've been criticizing the United States for 40 years. Friends in Nigeria say to me, do the Americans know you are always criticizing them? And I say, yes. And one of them said, well, and you still live there, you are either a very brave man or a very foolish man. The point is, I have some room like these programs to criticize. You will not have that in China.
Well, I will tell you this. The argument can be made. Dissidents catch the devil over here too. We just do it in a much smoother way. It's much, much smoother. You're not going to get on. You're not going to be in corporate media, right? You're not going to become a pundit on television. You're going to have a much harder slog. But like you said, we do have the space. What did Dr. King say? You have the right to protest for the right in the United States. You're going to be staying with us, Niakwete, but I know Netfa is going to be leaving. I want to give the last minute to him, and I promised Netfa to have you back. Netfa, your thoughts.
Oh, you need me to leave? Oh.
Well, no, you can stay. Bill Fletcher's going to be here. So just stay right here. I'm just going to add.
Okay.
How about that? We win by addition and not by subtraction, because I don't want you to rush through. Because I will say this. What you've heard from Netfa Freeman, what you hear from Niakwete, what you're going to hear from Bill Fletcher, these are all of our voices. These are our lived experiences. You as an immigrant, Mr. Kwete, and having seen so much on the continent and throughout the world, you say, wait a minute, but in America, I don't think you all really understand. You have the right to fight for the right. That's what Dr. King taught us. Netfa says, as someone who's a foundational African American, he says, hey, we've been catching the devil here for 500 years, because we got here with the Spanish in the 1500s and the 1530s. And so, because we see a lot of immigrants come here and they say, well, America's been very, very good to me. And then we see universities choosing Africans over American students. I mean, I'm only saying this as I go to the break. We're seeing all these games that are being played with everybody. And Africa is still feeding the world while Africans starve. So we gotta figure this thing out, so that this U.S. Africa summit, Africans need to win. That's what we're all trying to figure out. I think Professor Akwete and Mr. Freeman, I think we can all agree on that. We just want Africa to win. We want it all to be fair. We want it all to be fair. Call us at 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. More of the Santita Jackson Show. Boy, we're having a discussion today about Africa, the United States, and Russia, and China, and oh my word. Back in just a minute. Okay, you all have at it. I mean, I love this conversation because I think it's a conversation that we need to have. Professor Akwete? Mr. Freeman?
To that, we really
yes, I'm here.
Because no good movement. As you said, we all want Africa's advancement, African welfare. We all have ties to Africa. But even in a nuclear family, quote unquote nuclear family, there are differences of opinion, and there are good things, because when you have important issues and you have serious people, knowledgeable people discussing it, if you have more than two people discussing it and they agree on everything, then it means only one brain is working. So I am happy to have arguments and debates with people that I love and respect. As I said, that's why I have fought when the U.S. has been doing things to Zimbabwe that we thought were wrong. I recall him and I being on the same side and calling the U.S. out for sanctions slap on Zimbabwe just because Mr. Mugabe had the temerity to take back the land that was stolen.
Now that was the problem.
So
and he was a hero all over the continent. We were at President Kenyatta's first inauguration, and they invited Reverend Jackson, my father, and it was very exciting because they had him sitting with all of the heads of state. I'm sorry.
Miss Jackson, we have Mr. Fletcher on.
Fantastic. Welcome to the show, Bill Fletcher.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've got Netfa Freeman and Niakwete with us. So glad that you all here.
Hey, Bill.
But I was just sharing this story when, everybody walked in. People were so glad to see President Kaunda. Oh, yay. Because it was like tens of thousands of people there. And all of the leaders came in because you had to ride around the track. But when President Mugabe got in the building, the crowd went absolutely berserk. And I think part of it is the vilification that he had to endure in the West. I mean, many people don't know. I would just crack up when I would see all of these laudatory, expressions for the Queen of England. And bless her heart, I mean, I respected the fact that she preserved an institution that hurt so many of us. But she was tough. When he demanded that they receive the land back, he used to have tea with her at Buckingham Palace. Do you know she stopped having tea with him when he demanded the land back? Because see, that's what Mandela did not do. He said, give me the vote. He demanded the land. And oh boy.
Well, he demanded the land at a certain point when he was under immense political pressure internal to Zimbabwe. So it's a complicated story, and I wish we had time.
You'll be back.
We could go through it.
No, you'll be back so that we can talk about it. Because these are. I'm inviting everyone to my family table, because these are the debates and the discussions that we have, all the time. Because leadership is very, very, very difficult. It is not easy. I've seen it. I've lived with it, and the decisions that you have to make that make you look like you've been compromised when you're trying to bring all these people along. Do you think that with the way the Democratic Party has treated Reverend Jackson, we have felt good about this? But do you know that if we had not taken these hits, you would not have had a President Obama? And whatever problems we have with President Obama, he was better than the alternatives. And then but one of the things that we fell down on was criticism. We did not engage in loving critique of him, and we didn't push him. So we got what we got. That ought to be, that's politics 101. Complexion does not change direction, y'all.
May I respond to some of the other things that were being said?
Of course. We're going to be up in about a minute.
Okay.
And you could absolutely respond on the air, too.
No.
But we're on Facebook Live,
I
please.
didn't realize it.
No. We're on Facebook Live.
I want them to hear it on the air, too. But
well, stay right there, then. I don't want you to spend your best stuff over here, because we'll be up in about a minute. You know how that happens. Then you try to repeat it, and it just doesn't quite come out the same.
Yeah,
at least that happens to me.
Actually, because I had my own radio show. Sometimes people start to talk. I say, hold up, wait. Let's get that.
Cause I'm taking notes on all y'all. I'm gonna take this. I'm just gonna pull this tape and listen. So I'm so excited to have you all, and I want to have you back because we need to begin to have these discussions about Africa. The discussions that we have are about Europe. But Europe needs Africa to live and to be rich. You think they're gonna give those diamonds back to the Indians?
Taking for 500 years. They've been taking for 500 years.
Yeah, stealing, not taking. It's called theft.
Yeah, absolutely, unquestionably.
They won't give the Indians that diamond back from the Queen. I'm like, why not? My mind just gets
because
blown.
they know they give a little thing now. They are thinking, where will it stop?
Oh.
After it's going on, you should listen to Infantini. He said Europeans has been stealing for 3,000 years. They need to apologize for the next 3,000 years. And my take is, if a European says 3,000, it's probably 10,000.
You're right. Well, look, when Prince William said that Europeans were not used to war, I was like, are you serious right now? My dear brother, do you know your family? Oh gosh. Oh, the perversions of history. But I'm so glad you all are here to make it all right. So stay right here. It's too much. It's too much, but I'm so glad that you all are here with us today, helping us to learn. Okay, Jewel, how much time do we have? Well, I keep moving this hair off of my neck. I'm gonna have to start braiding it on the side. On my neck. Oh boy, you all are really wound up. You all should call at 773-763-9278. I'm speaking to my Facebook and YouTube viewers and listeners. You all should get involved in the conversation. You all are talking to each other. I cannot keep up with this conversation and this one over here, you all. So
stand by. Here we go.
Okay, call in 773-763-9278.
Change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about the USA Africa Summit. What does it mean? Is it perilous? Is it promise-filled? We've got a tremendous panel talking with us about it today, and you all are wound up online. I want you to come over to the radio and call us at 773-763-9278 here at WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. We were Air America, but now we are the Heartland Signal, and then AM 950 Radio. I can't forget my brothers and sisters to the north, Matt and everybody, and Chad Larson and all my friends up there. Sounds of Blackness. I love Reverend McAfee, Spike. I love you, love you, love you this morning. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. And let's talk about this U.S. Africa Summit. What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? It's got some of us feeling hopeful and some of us feeling like, oh, not again. Will this be the recolonization of Africa? I just have to put that out there. So we have to talk about that. But Niakwete, the professor from George Washington University, tells us that could happen. But we have the responsibility. We have the responsibility and we have the tools to ensure that that does not happen. Every great revolution in America has been led by Black people. And we can make this happen too. I believe that. I know that to be true. That is what history has shown us. So let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. Chicago, 38 degrees and cloudy today. Snow in Minneapolis, 34 degrees. Heartbreak. Morocco fell to France, but this was the first African team to get to the quarterfinals of the World Cup of Soccer. Congratulations to Morocco. We expect to see great things from you in the future. France will be playing Argentina, both the top teams, everybody, on Saturday. Cannot wait to see what the outcome will be. The Knicks played the Bulls and they bested us yesterday, 128-120. And the Clippers, well, they took down the Timberwolves 99-88. In the NHL, the Golden Knights will be playing Chicago, and the Wild were triumphant over the Red Wings 4-1. Tonight, the 49ers will be playing the Seahawks. Tornadoes have left trails of destruction, according to the CNN report, across Louisiana and the Southeast, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Alabama, and Florida. And they are moving to Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas today, praying for all of our brothers and sisters as they are in the pathway of that storm. The House of Representatives voted yesterday to pass a stopgap bill to avert a government shutdown at the end of the week. The White House is warning of a possible COVID-19 winter surge, urging Americans to gather and socialize safely with family and friends during the holiday season. Everybody, hand hygiene is key, everybody. It's key. The federal government is suing Arizona for placing shipping containers, forming a wall at the U.S.-Mexico border. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show, as nurses have had enough in England and they have kicked off the first ever strike against their healthcare system over low pay. Wow, everybody. So let's get right to it. I am so excited to have these persons with us today. They are absolutely brilliant. We've had Professor Niakwete from George Washington University. He's been with TransAfrica. Indeed, everyone calls him the African specialist, and we just absolutely respect and adore him. I wish I'd had him as a professor when I was at Howard, but you were George Washington and Georgetown. Got to get you over to Howard. And then, of course, we've got Netfa Freeman, Institute for Policy Studies, an organizer for Black Alliance for Peace. They do so much work helping us to help giving a Black voice to the peace movement. And Bill Fletcher, former president of TransAfrica, indeed one of the leading voices for justice for Africa all around the world. We are so grateful for all the work that you have done through TransAfrica and that you continue to do, Mr. Fletcher. You've been listening to Professor Akwete and Netfa Freeman, and you said, wait a minute, I got to jump in here. So go on, go for it. Your thoughts on the U.S.-Africa Summit and what you've been hearing.
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on the program. I just quickly, to respond to your earlier points, I think that the summit has to be looked at in a couple of ways. One is as a reassertion by the U.S. of what the ruling elite sees as its role in Africa. And that is particularly in competition with the growing influence of China. And so I think that this summit has to be understood. This is not some sort of act of charity or solidarity. At the same time, I think that Biden's announcement of including the African Union in the G20 is a very interesting development, and is a development that is largely the result of struggles that have been going on for years, both on the continent as well as here, for a greater recognition of the role of the African Union. And I think that that's important. One final thing, though, about the summit. This summit, as we've seen before, when Biden had a summit with Latin American countries, there's this sort of cherry pick approach that the U.S. administrations regularly engage in, where they'll have a regional summit and they'll invite some leaders and not others. And this is a game, and this is a very manipulative game. And one does not have to agree with the leaderships of different countries, such as in Africa, Eritrea, and or Equatorial Guinea, for that matter, to recognize that all of Africa needs to be represented if there's going to be a summit. Just one final point about the World Cup. While it was great that Morocco got so far in this, one of the things that has failed to be discussed in that context is that despite all of the discussion of Morocco beating back against colonizers, Morocco controls 80% in Sahara. It is, in effect, colonized another African country. So while we applaud the victory up until yesterday, I think we have to always have in mind that this is a very mixed bag.
And it always is, Mr. Fletcher. I mean, it is a mixed bag because you want to see these leaders recognized, but then when you look at their internal politics, you go, I don't know. But, it's like we're fighting a lot of different fights on different fronts, because the fact is, at the end of the day, these are the presidents of said countries. How will America relate to them? What should be the goal of this U.S. Africa summit, and what should we, as members of the diaspora, as American citizens, what should we be pushing to make happen, Bill Fletcher?
I think that there's a difference between what the goal of the summit is and what we should be pushing. So the goal from the Biden administration is not going to be our goal.
Absolutely not. And understanding that, because we always have different goals, right? It's just like even with the civil rights laws and things like that, we had a certain set of goals and the government had another. It was like, okay, what should our point be at? And what is their point?
I think that the African Union needs to be strengthened. That's one thing. And I think that to me, that's really central. The African Union needs to be strengthened, and there needs to be greater efforts towards continental unification that begins with more regional unification. I do not think I think there was a fateful decision made when the Organization for African Unity was formed, and there was a decision to accept the colonial borders. I think that Africa continues to be held back by those borders, and therefore there need to be regional approaches to Africa's development, and that the U.S. should support that. I think the second thing is that going back to the George W. Bush administration, there has been a continuous military approach in U.S. policy towards Africa. When Bush announced his Trans-Sahel project back in, I believe it was 2003, 2004, there was an emphasis on fighting terrorism when terrorism was not a major problem at that point. That poverty, dictatorships, a number of other things were central problems. Yet, it's sort of like that saying goes, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And when you're operating the way that the United States does when it comes to Africa, everything has a military solution, which in fact exacerbates internal contradictions. And I think we've got to be pushing around that. And I think that we need a congressional Black caucus that has a much more developed policy towards Africa than it has. It needs to be prepared to speak out on issues like Western Sahara. It needs to be prepared to speak out on helping, making offers to assist in reconciliation efforts. The situation in Somalia, for example, could use the assistance of the congressional caucus. I don't think it's enough to be in terms of trade agreements, for instance. So I think that our approach towards Africa, progressive African Americans, needs to be reignited.
Netful Freeman, your response.
So yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of a lot of what Bill said. I think that the interests, and he said a lot there. I should have been taking notes on the points that were so. The interests of the leadership, and I guess I will also to respond to what was said previously. I think it would be a mistake for us to get into this, recognizing that the summit is a response, one of the responses by the United States to deal with this increased influence of the Chinese, of China, and more so, and then Russia to a lesser extent on the continent of Africa, and that it's about that, but we shouldn't make our positions on that about how much we meet in line with China or disagree with China or whatever. We have to disagree with the United States. I mean, it's continuing neocolonialism. All the accusations that's thrown around. I'm not going to judge China's domestic situation. That's not really for me, and it shouldn't be for any of us, because we really don't. The accusations don't mean anything. We do know that in terms of domestic policy here, the United States has the longest held political prisoners on the planet in the United States. Some of them as a result of COINTELPRO, some of them just being Mutulu Shakur getting ready to get out in his old age, the inhumanity of holding him in prison until he was on his deathbed, that being the prerequisite for him to be released. Mumia Abu Jamal, Sundiata Al-Kholi. I mean, they're releasing people because they're ready to die. And that's what, the judge was sick enough to say that Mutulu couldn't get released because he wasn't on his deathbed. I mean, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about here. How democratic the United States is. It's a democracy it's the oligarchy. It's a democracy for the rich, not the rest of us. But then, and we have to recognize those things are important if we're going to recognize the nature of it in terms of it's doing something for Africa. And so when it comes to so one of the things that I want to say, want to talk about, is that we've been dealing, Black Lives for Peace has been coming together. We had our own summit type, and we've been invited to speak on some forums about this summit, largely held by people on the continent that are in the United States, have presence in the United States, but they're from the continent, and they have a different perspective of this. One of the things they say in terms of looking at the relationships between Africa and the U.S., China and the U.S. in terms of African interest, and this is, I think, very key in how we need to deal with it, is reminiscent of something Kwame Nkrumah said long ago when they asked you going looking east or you looking west in terms of the emergence. He said, I'm looking forward. And that in this, I'm not looking east or west. I'm looking forward. What's in the best interest of African and colonized people? The people in these alternative summits said the same thing. One of them talked about us needing the reemergence of a non-aligned movement, that we're looking at the record of each and figuring out how to deal with each based on our own terms and what's in our best interest. If we were to look at China's not, it's giving loans to Africa. He wants to say it's so bad, it's colonization. It's not gangsterism. It's bilateral agreements. Maybe they're doing their own interest, and maybe sometimes they're on in the best. Maybe they're not the best deals, but that's where the class question, the class struggle among African peoples is important. It means that the compradors ain't working out no deals. They're not being forced into them like the United States will do, using its financial institutions and using militarism right? We just got finished, and it's interesting. It's important for us to talk also about the Congressional Black Caucus, which are really domestic compradors in terms for them by and large. I don't want to, condemn everybody, but let's just face it here. They're not standing up to talking about AFRICOM and the proliferation of militarization on the continent. Gregory Meeks just introduced a bill that designed that got passed in the House. They all voted for it, or most of them voted for it. Countering the malign influence of Russia in Africa Act, an act designed in the face of this summit. Now they're acting like they want partnerships. It's designed to dictate the terms of Africa and vis-a-vis how they vote or the relationship to Russia. And if you either with us, quote unquote, you with us or you against us when it comes to Russia. And this bill is designed to make you comply with our issues. I mean, where's the sovereignty, respect for sovereignty? Bills passed in Congress and passed in, if pushed through the Senate, legislation designed to undermine the sovereignty of African countries when they bring them together here for these things. So we do need a class struggle in Africa. That's where, instead of judging, talking about what China's doing, we got to have a hard line on how do we create a foundation that recognizes the interests of the working class people and the masses on the ground. I mean, whether the recognition of the African leaders is not so important. We need the recognition of the people on the ground who are calling for a different situation. I mean, it was said that it was disrespectful to say it was Uncle Tom and Uncle Sam, but I mean, the people in Africa are talking about the unpopularity of the leaders, how democracy and all that kind of stuff. It's not just a vote.
Well,
it's not only merely a vote. It's how the interests of the people and the human rights are recognized.
Well, I just think that we have to be very careful to paint with these broad brushes. I mean, I'm hearing you, I hear you. But there are so many nuances, and it's one thing to run for president. It's another thing to take the oath of office, and then it's another thing when you get in the seat and see all that you have to deal with. I mean, because I've seen so many people who really
I
are.
agree with that.
No, I want to say that. Let me say this: who are revolutionary in their thought and in their actions and in their intentions, and then they get there, and you find that there is a ruling class inside of government. This deep state thing is real. There's some people who are there, whether whoever's president, whoever goes in, and they really do run things. And I think that we have to really understand the nature of power, because my father. I mean, because he's often said to me, just remember, we were in slavery longer than we've been free. So even our understanding of power is fairly new. But we've got to go to. I want to get Nia Kwete in before we go to break. Professor Kwete, I've got about 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Hey, Bill. It was mentioned that there've been side events ahead of the summit. It is true. I organized one last Friday, and I was also a panelist. I organized it. I like what Bill said about strengthening the African Union. The keynote speaker I invited used to be the number 2 at the African Union. So I brought him to talk about where U.S. what Africans would like to see from the United States, especially from the African Union. I was also a panelist. I talk about U.S. military engagement with Africa, and I said exactly what Bill has just said, that the U.S. should support the African Union, and the African Union then work with the regional organizations so that they deal with the issues of security and of people being killed. Because as we speak, people are being killed in Africa, and the Western media does not cover it. But in terms of what I had said about China, Netflix says, well, it's not his business to check out what the Chinese are doing domestically. Actually, I think it is my business. If people are coming to Africa to woo Africa, I need to check each of them out, their strengths, their weaknesses, where they lie, where they tell the truth. I want to do that with the United States. I am very respectful of the African-American history here. I'm learning every day of the horrendous things done. But I'm saying you also have to check China out. You can't assume that they are wonderful people. I'm from Ghana. They are dead now. They are poisoning the forest. They are taking the bauxite. They are abusing Ghanaians. Chinese have been known to pee into water buckets that Ghanaians drink from. I am old enough that I met Kwame Nkrumah when I was a kid. I was taken to his house. I walked by Lumumba and Nkrumah walked by me. So I know what these people stood for. And as you said, Nkrumah said, neither left nor right, forward. That means check out the right, check out the left, and do what is good for Africa. And my point is, if you say that the United States meeting with African leaders is Uncle Tom meeting with Uncle Sam, then I'm saying, but the Chinese have been meeting with the African leaders. This is America's second. China has done it for 8 times, more than 20 years. Why is it okay for the Chinese to meet with the African Uncle Toms that you are talking about, but it's wrong for the United States to do it?
I've got 30 seconds.
I'm not talking about a meeting. It's not a meeting that's bad. It's the relationship. And China just relieved the debt of several African countries. We're not talking about that. United States. We're talking about the neo-colonial relationship of the U.S. that's not changing toward Africa.
Well, like Santita has said, we will need much longer time to talk about these issues, and I think we should. Because there are 1.4 billion people on the continent of Africa. You've talked about the poor people there. I agree absolutely. I talk to my relatives and every day. I've talked to people before I got on the air today because they are 5 hours ahead. I've talked to people in Malawi. They are 7 hours ahead. So I have an ear on the ground. I was born in Ghana and I studied the United States, and I'm looking at both. And I'm saying to you, we cannot assume the Chinese are perfect. Okay, we cannot. You
didn't hear me say that.
We have skeptical.
Stand by. Hold on.
Hold
on, everybody. Hold on. Oh, I love this spirited discussion, which we need to have. We need to have it, and that's why you're having it on the Santita Jackson Show. Hey, I don't mind disagreements. I don't mind just as long as they're not disagreeable. We can do that. We're mature enough to do that here, and we're going to hammer this out because we need to have this discussion right here, right now. Bill Fletcher, Nia Kwete, and Netha Freeman on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Ooh. Okay, love it, love it. I'm going to bring on, I typically have a segment with Dr. Max Wolf. You probably know his father, Dr. Richard Wolf, the economist. Yeah. And he comes on the show every Thursday. He's been a real dear friend and wonderful ally. But he's going to come on. We're going to be talking about inflation, but we're going to continue this discussion. Begging your pardon, gentlemen. Are you all, can you stay with me?
Yeah.
For how long? How much time do you need?
Until the top of the hour. But Mr. Fletcher, if you need to leave earlier, because I will give you a word, whatever you need to respond. What you just heard, I'd love for you to respond, Mr. Fletcher.
Oh, no, I will.
Okay. I know you will. But the show will end at the top of the hour.
Okay.
Thank you. So great. But I just think this is, trust me, I'm going to have you back so we can continue this discussion. Because I think it's worthwhile discussion.
Santita,
yes.
This is me. The last thing I want to do is be disagreeable. You know, the two brothers we have on, I know them and I love them both, okay? Mm-hmm. I have been accused, so people have said to me, you even debate with yourself, okay? So my disagreement with Netfa is not any kind of a personal thing. Actually, you know, it takes different points of view to arrive at what is good. So I'm respectful of his analysis where I see it differently. I want to say it with passion, but I want to say it with deep
I think
respect.
that you are. See, I'm telling you, look, I feel like I'm between Jesse and Jackie, okay? I feel like I'm between my parents right now. Can you bring the radio down just a bit, Jewel? Because, you know, these are the arguments that I grew up with. You know, and I think that you can disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, I don't take it personally.
No, but it's not being personal. It's not being delivered personally. So, I mean, that's, if I felt that this were getting vitriolic and mean and nasty and personal, I would stop it. Mm-hmm. Just so that you know, because I don't do that here. I don't do that. Mm-hmm. I don't allow it here. I never even called President Trump out of his name. I don't believe in that. I don't make these things personal at all. I just don't believe in it. But your passion, please bring it. We need that passion. And I think there's a whole lot that we could learn when you look at the Black Caucus that I know today is not the Black Caucus I knew as a little girl with Ron Dellums and John Conyers and oh my God, and Charles Diggs and all these people. And we have to revive that. But we also have to take our advocacy as seriously as our Jewish brothers and sisters do. They don't budge on Israel. They don't move. And I think Black people have to, and that's been part of Reverend Jackson's work, Trans Africa's work. It has been that work to help us to understand how we need to take ownership of Africa as brothers and sisters in the diaspora. We have to do that.
Somebody just reacted. One of the groups when we organized, somebody just sent a private tweet, WhatsApp tweet, and they said, oh, I can't believe that they made Blinken, the Secretary of State. He met with most of the African leaders one-on-one. And she said, why is that? This was like 6 hours ago, and I wrote back and said, you know why? Because we don't have enough respect. The politicians in the United States and in Washington don't fear the Americans who speak out for Africa.
Miss Jackson, we have about 15 seconds here.
You have Dr. Wolf?
We do not have Dr. Wolf yet. He has not answered yet.
Okay. Can we get him? Let me know,
I'll text
please.
you when he's on.
Okay.
All right, stand by.
I'm sorry.
I'm agreeing that we need a strong.
Stand by.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Oh boy, we have had quite the discussion, and we are having it. It's a passionate discussion about this U.S. Africa summit, and really how we should approach Africa and how we can protect Africa, particularly those of us who are part of the African diaspora. But I think that all Americans should have something to say here, and let's talk about this, everybody, on the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and let's talk with Bill Fletcher, the former head of Trans Africa, and the Professor Niakwete from George Washington University. He's been with Trans Africa. Once you're with Trans Africa, to me, you never leave. You can't. And Netfa Freeman, Institute for Policy Studies. And of course, you've been there too, Mr. Professor Akwete. And he is an organizer for the Black Alliance for Peace. Was it you, Mr. Fletcher, who wanted to respond to the spirited discussion that we've been hearing, Brother Freeman and Brother Akwete, in which they have been engaged?
Yes, no, absolutely. See, I think that I have to actually disagree with Brother Nefta on one part of this. I think it's an obligation to not be agnostic about the internal affairs of other countries, because one has to always look at what's going on there, what does it say about that country, and what potential ramifications does it have for the rest of us. But when I look at Africa and the issue of China and the United States, I think a lot about subprime loans. In other words, I remember before the crash, the various phone calls that were being made to Black folks in particular, and the offers were often wonderful. Just you could virtually just have a truck drive up and give you the money, except for one thing, the fine print. I think that the issue with China and Africa is that we're looking at a very different China than once expressed solidarity with people in Africa that supported national liberation struggles, that helped to build the Tanzam Railroad. We're looking at a China that is operating on a basically capitalist basis. And the conditions that they're offering countries in Africa are sometimes better than offered by the United States. But they're also turning a blind eye towards any internal issues in those countries, the nature of those governments. And I think that it goes, I mean, this is where I think what you were saying, that there's a little contradiction, because you're right. There's class struggle going on in Africa. There are different governments that are trying to make use of competition between China and the United States to get the best deal. That's fine, as long as you look at the fine print. And when you look at the fine print, you start seeing the kinds of things that Nia's talking about, not just in Africa, but you see this in Asia, in terms of the types of agreements that the Chinese are signing. So I think the idea is that one has to look very carefully at what's going on and understand that Africa, being so resource rich, is a target for capitalists, whether they're coming from China or from the United States, and that we need to be supporting people there on the ground that are fighting for self-determination and for alternative economic development. Well, that really is our role.
Well, you're saying you disagree with me, but you're just repeating what I said. I never said not to deal with the agreements, or that China's perfect or anything. I know you didn't say I said that, but that's being characterized. That's exactly what I said, that we need to be determining things on our own terms. In terms of judging China, I mean, sometimes I just say it's a disposition, and I'm not talking about, I was responding to how Nee's talking about it. In other words, if you don't support the Biden administration, then you must be supporting China, and China's, all good. I'm saying we need to be reemerging. I said it, a non-aligned movement. We need to deal with the class struggle in Africa, which is at the nature. If we were to decide which is better, then the gangsterism of the U.S., can't match at least there's a bilateral nature to the agreement between China. Even if they're not in the best interest, that's because of classes. Those who are working the deals aren't. But Bill, that the United States doesn't stand for that. They will destroy your country if you stand up against them, and they have to be called out for that. We can't now come and say that they're going to hold a summit that's in our best interest, and then they invite the same class of those who've been presiding over the deals in both countries and to try to shore up neoliberalism and then that class to buy them out.
Well, I don't think they ever said it was going to be in our best interest. We know that what America does is always in America's best interest, and it's our job to make sure that Africa is the winner. But hold on one moment. I want you to respond, and then I'm going to bring in Dr. Wolf, and I've got some callers who want to jump in as well. Professor Akwete?
Okay, yes, just one point, because we've had a lot of time and these issues are important. I just want to correct one thing that Netfa was saying, that is my position, that if you criticize what Biden is doing, or if you don't accept what Biden is doing, then you are for the Chinese. No, what I am saying, and he's saying non-aligned movement. I grew up when Ghana was gripped by the non-aligned movement, and Nkrumah and Sukarno and others, so I understand it. I put it this way, as I said, I tell everybody, trust nobody. Trust nobody. Africans should trust nobody. Everybody comes, like Bill said, read the fine print. So I'm not against China. I'm not against the U.S. I'm saying we distrust everybody and we check, because we've had 500 years of being abused. And if we cannot learn from that 500 years, then we have really big problems. Where I grew up, I was told, you want to marry somebody, visit their village, visit their home, check them out. So I'm saying we should check out the Chinese and we should check out the Americans too. We don't trust anybody because with the African people.
Well, you know what? Hold on. I want to bring in Dr. Wolf, because he's kind of standing outside of this, looking in as an economist. And of course, his father, Dr. Richard Wolf. Everyone here knows him and has so much admiration and respect for him. And you will have the same for this Dr. Wolf. The apple does not fall too far from the tree. One of just brilliant, insightful economist and social critic. This U.S.-Africa summit, what do you make of it, Dr. Wolf, before we go to the callers?
Look, I think it's an interesting moment. I think we're a little late to the game here, right? And I think we see a little bit of an opening. So this sort of smarter part is there's a bit of an opening. The promise of China was greeted by many as this sort of different approach. And it's the same approach that every colonial group has had who's come there. Sometimes the rhetoric is different. And there's one major difference, which is unlike the other colonial attempts, they're not interested much in the labor. And so that's really going to bend things, right? Because they have their own surplus labor issue. It may become a deficit, but they have as much in hiring people or transferring skills. In fact, they're pretty good at not doing that because they know how that game is played because they played it so successfully themselves. So I think that is the big difference here. But I think as we go into a 20, 30-year global transformation of the relationship between labor, skills, and capital, I would keep that very much in mind. I do also think that Africa as a prize for natural resources and as a market for goods is very important to everyone. But I think if Africa is to have the economic development she deserves and needs, she needs to fit into the global economy, not as a captive market and not as a provider of extracted resources. And so while there may be small differences, they're largely academic between the different interests other parties have. And if you rely on your trade partners to help your economic development, the story always ends tragically for you.
Let me go to some of these callers. Jewel, you've been holding for a minute. Jewel from New York. What's on your mind, sweetie?
Hi, it's Anita.
Hi.
It's me again. I just want to say, yes.
Jewel? Oh my goodness. You know what? Put her on hold and make sure, Jewel.
She just dropped. Not sure why.
It's okay. Let's go to Renee. Renee, what's on your mind before you run to class, Madam Teacher?
Good morning. Good morning, and thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Santita, when I think about the United States wanting to have a relationship with Africa, she just said my name.
Okay, Renee?
Good morning, Santita. It's me again. It's Jewel. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. All right. I don't know
Renee
what's
dropped.
going on. Well, Renee dropped. Renee called back. But Jewel, okay, you're here. Jewel, what's on your mind?
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
It's been a while. It's me again. I just had so much stuff all these days listening to the wonderful conversations. And this is a fabulous conversation. I was watching it yesterday. And to listen to the diaspora from the expertise of these men is just something that a lot of people weren't even mindful of because we're so busy with the routine of everything. And sometimes these things just seem to happen and go by. Nobody knows what's happening. That's why it's so important that we tune into your fabulous show, Santita.
Thank you, Jewel. My gem, my dear friend. I love Jewel. Thank you so much. You know, we're rolling with it. We're rolling with it. You know, thank you so much. I love you, Jewel. And I love you, Renee. And I love all the callers. But let me switch back to my panel because I feel blessed to have Bill Fletcher and Niakwete and Netfa Freeman. I want to make sure that we're singing from the same sheet of music here. What do you think is being lost in translation here, Bill Fletcher, with Professor Kwete and Netfa Freeman? Because we all want the same thing, I do believe.
I think that that there's a good deal of unity on this call, but there are in fact shades of difference. So, so for example, the thing I was taking issue with you, Netfa, about was your comment about it's not up to us to be passing judgment on the internal affairs in China, and I think I just disagree. Just like I would take issue with what is going on in Morocco, and I would as well take issue with what's going on in China. So I don't think we can be agnostic on that. But I do think that there's a lot of unity about the need for African countries to develop strategies that are addressing the needs of African countries. But therein lies the rub. Who determines those needs? And that's where struggles going on within those countries become very important. The question of who is leading those countries what classes they're leading, what social forces they're leading, whose interests they're leading. So it's not an abstract question. There is no abstract interest of Somalia or of the DRC or of Ghana. There's no abstract interest. There's an interest based on the needs of the majority in those countries. And I think that's where we're having some differences. And I think that there's also this question about how to relate to initiatives that come out of the United States. So, for example, is the right approach to basically denounce all of these efforts, or is there a way to engage any of these efforts, even if you're distrusting of the objectives of the United States? And I think that we have some shades of difference there.
But let me ask you, Dr. Wolf, before I go back to the rest of this panel. We have these institutions that appear to want to work out good business deals with us, but they economically imprison the global South, the IMF, the World Bank, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is this an opportunity to change those relationships? Indeed, those institutions need to be changed, or something needs to happen, because they're not helpful. They do not help Africans specifically to be free. They just further enslave economically and in so many other ways.
Look, I think the institutions of the past largely do what they were designed to do, which is not necessarily help working people anywhere, north or south, global north or global south. I think some of the differences between the global north and the global south have changed. And I think how a country does, to the extent that you can speak of a country without all the disunity and diversity that sort of sits below that artificial container of a country, right? The interests of the country are best served by where it fits into the global economy. I think we're still stuck on the who and good guys and bad guys. I don't think there are good guys and bad guys. I don't think the who matters that much, including to the elite who think that who they are, how they somehow deserve a position that I think we all believe no one should have. I think those differences are a little bit the older differences. I think the newer differences are, is there a path forward for people, a sizable number of people, on some at least quasi-meritocratic or need basis, to have a life with self-determination and dignity? And if there is, and if that opening gets broader, you're a good partner. And if there isn't, and that offering gets narrower, you're not a good partner. And the last thing I tell you is one of the lessons of history is the devil you know is not necessarily worse than the new devil in new shoes with a new haircut.
Professor Ekwete, what is the path forward? What is the path forward? I've got about 8 minutes before we go, and I want to give each of you a couple of minutes to stretch out and help us to understand what the path forward is. And I promise you all that we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to have another conversation and other conversations like this specifically about Africa and what we're going to do about Africa, how we're going to relate to Africa, and be the best advocates for Africa. Professor Ekwete.
Yes, I think, and again, something Bill said struck me. We have to understand what's going on in African countries. So the path forward is that we need to be well tuned in to what is happening in Africa. And I don't mean the presidents, I don't mean the elite, I don't mean the well-to-do. I mean Africa's big, poor majority that struggle to raise their kids, struggle to put food on the table, struggle with all kinds of issues. We need to understand what they are going through and what they want, because the elites don't always reflect them. In fact, they betray them. And at the same time, we need to understand very clearly what is going on here in the United States. And because there is some space, when laws are being passed, we can read them, we can push back, we can come on radio shows like this. So we need to be well informed about what's going on really in Africa, what's going on really in the U.S., and then we push hard, as someone said, maybe it's Bill, maybe it's Nesfa, maybe it's Dr. Wolf, that their agenda for doing the summit should not constrain us we should have a good agenda. We should push back and change the agenda. And I don't have rose-tinted glasses about American democracy. We just saw what Trump did. We just see all the things going on in the States. So the point is, what I have learned is when the real American people, the grassroots, and they push, they can change what the president and the Congress and others think they can do. And this was the big lesson I learned from the 10 years that I worked at Trans-Africa as part of the anti-apartheid movement. Reagan was for apartheid, and he was forced. He vetoed the sanctions bill, and even people like Newt Gingrich and Reagan's friends came in and overrode his veto because there were people, and that is mainly African-American people on the streets saying, no, we want you to cut your support to apartheid. So the way forward is learn what's going on in Africa among the real people, what they want, learn what's going on in the United States, and then push, because the United States has a lot of power, push to make sure that the U.S. is pursuing the right policies and not something that Biden or Blinken or someone else says. Thank you.
Absolutely. Netfa, you got 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I wanted to point out in this case, I wanted to talk about the Black Alliance for Peace position. We have the U.S. of Africa campaign, Shut Down AFRICOM. We have a steering committee for that, the U.S. Out of Africa network that are people based on the continent. This is what informs our campaign. And what's lost in terms of really this devil that we know being the worst one is the militarization of the continent. After the years of assassinating the moment CIA overthrowing, because we need to add the CIA to all the other alphabets we're talking about. The CIA overthrowing Nkrumah, all of this. Now there's AFRICOM, the proliferation and the militarization of the continent that is seeing the people in the continent are seeing suffering. We're calling for the complete withdrawal of U.S. forces from Africa, the closure of U.S. bases throughout the world, and the Congressional Black Caucus to oppose AFRICOM, the militarization of Africa, and conduct hearings on AFRICOM's impact on the continent with the full participation of members of U.S. civil society, African and U.S. civil society. And people should check us out at blackallianceforpeace.com and join this campaign to get the U.S. out of Africa and shut down AFRICOM, which is causing death and destruction, to ensure use. Because it's not just about the military; it's also it's an industry. Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Gunham, all of these military contractors are making money off of the death and destruction in Africa. And this is what's not going to be talked about at the summit. We want to make sure this is front and center. And this also should be telling us, reveal the true nature of the interest and the agenda of U.S. imperialism and Western imperialism. If we're not talking about getting U.S. out of shutting down AFRICOM and stopping, and dealing with these things like Libya and all of these adventures, Somalia, what they've done, these type of things, then I don't know how we can, talk about what kind of comparison that we're making here.
Bill Fletcher.
I think one of the central things, first of all, I want to thank you again for inviting me to participate in this. I think one of the central things we've got to do is progressive African Americans need to meet with, interact with progressive social movements on the continent and engage in a discussion about what folks on the continent believe the role that the United States should play via Africa, and not make a lot of assumptions. One of the things that U.S. African Americans frequently do is that we look at the rest of the world through our eyes as people here in the United States and don't listen to and look at situations from the standpoint of people in other countries. And so I think we need to engage with progressive social movements, environmental groups, women's groups, labor groups, etc., on the continent. And listen to what they're saying, what they want from or don't want from the United States. And I think that will change our relationship and also change our own consciousness.
Absolutely. Dr. Wolf, I got about a minute left. Go for it.
Yeah,
it seems the world is shifting and all of these, everything is being realigned. And Africa's now in it.
All the chess pieces are moving, right? So when all the chess pieces are moving, the way you see the world needs to be moving too, right? So that's the first rule evaluating anyone's analytics, right? If they have the same analytics they had 20, 30, 40 years ago, and you see all the chess pieces have moved a lot, they're moving now, then they're probably going to tell an interesting story, but it may not completely capture the moment. And that's a struggle for anyone. I would say I think the frame of the discussion might be shifted. So I would look at how African development, with the development of African American populations in the country, can cross-serve each other's purposes. Because I don't think that Africans are necessarily always poorer or more resource restricted than African Americans. I think it's two communities that need each other and need to have better access and a better position in the global economy. And so I think a way to think about it might be the diaspora with the African development goals and how to fit those pieces together so that Africa can invest in Africa and in African American businesses here, and then African American businesses here can invest at home and also abroad. I think that would make a more vibrant, forward-looking alternative than just sort of picking partners for Africa or trying to be helpful to from here, because I think there's also help from that could happen. And there are very wealthy corporations, individuals, and states and groups in Africa as well, which might be able to make good returns, do well by doing good, making investments in African American communities here. I think it's a two-way street. And I think going into a intense long-term battle in the global economy, you don't want to be seeing that as one side helping the other, right? It's both sides pushing forward together, or the alliance will have restrictions and maturity issues as it develops.
Parity, not charity, everybody. Pay attention to this summit. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. I thank you, my wonderful panel. God bless you. Thank you, board operator, for a great show. God bless you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We are on Facebook Live. Do you all have anything else? Is there anything that was left unsaid that you'd like to say to my Facebook Live audience, which has grown a lot?
Yes, this is me. I do. One of the things that Biden just announced is he signed an executive order creating the President's Advisory Council on the African Diaspora Engagement in the United States. It goes to what I think I heard Dr. Wolf say. My point is there's going to be a body. I have two problems with it. I think it's a good initiative. It's going to create the African diaspora in the United States as a body that will have its own discussions and then tell the Biden administration what they want to do. Of course, how it operates is important. The two problems I have with it quickly is they set criteria and they said, okay, people who have distinguished themselves in sports, in business and all that. It sounds extremely elitist to me. I wish it was more grassroots related, more in the black churches in the United States. The second problem I have with it is if you're going to get a body representing 40 million people, the body should be bigger than 12 people. Because when you are looking for sports stars and athletes and movie makers, you can quickly get 12 people who don't really have been paying attention to what's going on in the United States among the people who support Africa. But there is that initiative that in 180 days, Blinken is supposed to submit, having formed this council of the African diaspora in the United States to advise the president. I think they should jigger a couple of things.
Netfa, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I mean, I just think that thank you for having me on. Thank you for having us on. I think we really need to, the types of these types of initiatives, and it's kind of, I guess, what these skepticism is alluding to, will always favor the elite class. It's always a division situation, and the class struggle in Africa is important, just like the class struggle around black people is important. But we are, if anything, imperialism tells us that we're an African people and that our interests are more in line with what's happening to African people on the continent and other places like Haiti and Colombia and whatnot than they are with the white supremacist capitalist oligarchy in the United States. And I think recognizing that will make things a lot clearer. But everything they put forth will always be based on a neoliberalism, on the favoring an elite class, because that's how they have to operate. anything else, like if you institutionalize universal health care, education, or those kind of things, try to use the resources of your country and nationalize them and try to use them for the best interest, they will overthrow you. They will try to, that's what the nature of the United States imperialism. And so we have to beware of it. And I mean, understand it.
Look, I hear you, and we're going to continue to have these discussions because I think you understand, as someone in radio who communicates, and you, of course, Bill Fletcher, you understand, we all understand how important it is to have these conversations, because far too often, and particularly in independent radio and independent media, these are conversations that are of great import. They mean a lot to us. They mean a lot to somebody. That's why these people are at the White House. But we need to be able to have this discussion on our platform from our perspective, with our best interests lifted most high. Bill Fletcher, are you still there? Well, he might be gone, but I hope that I really hope that you all will come back, and let's just continue this discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me at any time.
You don't have to thank me. You know you're home here. Get out of here. Get out of here. No, really, if you don't have this conversation here, where will you have it? I mean,
By the way, I'm supposed to submit an essay today. I'm calling out the mainstream media for their coverage of climate change. The reason the rich countries that polluted the earth don't want to pay is because the mainstream media is covering up the story and lying to them. So thank God for your outlet and for progressive radio.
Thank you.
And Nate, the biggest violators of the climate crisis, the carbon emissions, is the military. So call them out. Include AFRICOM in there when you call them out, and make the connection.
Mm-hmm. And all the heads of AFRICOM are black.
Since Santita is here, that's why I've been begging to come on your show. You are in control. Just bring me on and let me put my trial below out there so you can shoot them down, because this kind of debates are very important.
You are very sweet. Well, I just wanted to let you all speak and, quite frankly, air your views. The fact that you were in disagreement was not, I felt that was healthy. And what was even healthier was that you did it in a manner that was respectful. That is what I think people need to see and hear. We don't need to candy up all this stuff. I think we need to disagree without being disagreeable. And sometimes you shout, look, this is like being at my dining room table, because we have spirited discussions. It's like Jesse and Jackie, because my parents do that. Okay, because my mom is all the way over here and my father's all the way over there sometimes, but their intentions are the same, but the way they approach things different. I was speaking to you about that yesterday, Professor Corte. My parents have different backgrounds, so their approaches are different. My grandmother chopped sugarcane in Cuba. Okay, so her approach is
the way I look at it. White supremacy is the big problem. Of course, I know NEFA will chime in and say, look at imperialism and capitalism too. But if you want to put it in racial terms, it's white supremacy. So for me, my guiding light is I reserve my best behavior and best respect for other black people. I respect Netfa, okay? He will tell you, we disagree because I'm trying to learn from him and I'm saying, hey, this is what I think. Tell me what's wrong with what I'm saying, okay? But I reserve my best respect for black people, for black men, for black women, because when racists are attacking black people, how can I look in the mirror if I join in disrespecting another black person because I'm then saying the racists are right?
Well, I hear you. I think we've got to respect everybody, and the Bible gives us this instruction: not to like, but to love. And so I just think that when you love people, you do respect people, and you acknowledge the differences that we have, and we just try to work out the kinks. My great great aunt Addie used to say, it takes all kinds to make a world, and heaven knows. So it would be boring if we all said the same things and thought the same way. We have different experiences that shape us. And that's all there is to it. I think Dr. Wolf had a hard stop at the top of the hour, but I thank him for being so understanding. Because I thank all of you. Really, thank you. I can't thank you enough, and I just want you to come back on the show.
Okay.
I kept you a little bit longer than you were going to be kept. But so thank you for being so kind.
It was good. It's always good because a lot of times you get these little short interviews that don't really allow you to get out the full breadth and length of the complexities of the issue. So I really appreciate the time you allowed us to be on.
Well, we needed it. God bless you. God bless you, and Merry Christmas.
Have a good day, everyone.
God bless you. May the spirit of Christmas be with all of you in this holy season, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you, board operator, for a great show. Woo! I'm out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.